It was a weekend of threats, protests, and even arson as critics accused the White House of taking way too long to condemn the potential for violence. Far-left activists ramping up their rage against the Supreme Court after the leaked draft opinion on Roe v. Wade. Protesters chanting outside the homes of Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Chief Justice John Roberts on Saturday. Another one is planned for tonight outside the home of Justice Samuel Alito. And a pro-life group's headquarters in Wisconsin attacked with 2 Molotov cocktails. Vandals spray painting graffiti that reads, "If abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either." Police are investigating the incident as arson. The White House questioned over why it waited to speak out against the violence.
Does the president plan to condemn the leak of the Supreme Court draft opinion or the doxing of the justices now that we've seen violence unfold?
Well, I would say that we have been clear, and the president's position has long been that we should not see protest that takes the form of violence, that takes the form of vandalism, and that threatens anyone. We have not seen violence or vandalism against Supreme Court justices. We have seen it at Catholic churches. That's unacceptable. The president does not support that. We have seen it at some conservative organizations. That we don't support that.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi adding her voice to the fight over abortion. She's praising protesters using righteous anger to march and mobilize over the end of Roe. And some in the media not concerned with potential threats against Supreme Court justices.
I think for a lot of people, a conversation about civility feels like it misses the mark when constitutional rights that you believe that you had for over 50 years are about to be overturned. The justices have security.
And then other justices are saying you have no right to stand up and freely protest, peacefully protest outside of our homes. We have a right to privacy. Well, women have a right to privacy as well. And women have a right to privacy with their bodies.
Okay, so now we have our Jesse Waters, our very own Jesse Waters is back. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I think people have been anxious to hear what you think about the leaked draft and the aftermath.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to thank everybody for their support and everybody here around the table. Thank you, and thank you for the bourbon. I only had a few drinks before the show today. I know what people are going to say. Waters, you went to people's homes. I did, but there's a difference. I went to elucidate, not to intimidate. There's one guy with a microphone shows up, asks a polite question, and then leaves. It's a lot different than having a mob of angry, radical activists screaming at the top of their lungs at nighttime while the kids are home. That's different, and that's what I want to make clear right now. I might have had my collar up. That was probably the most flagrant thing I did.
Terrible.
The White House gave license to this. Remember last week they didn't really condemn it, and now you see it's gone full-blown crazy outside. I think Alito had to leave his house. He's in an undisclosed location. This is from the same crowd that bailed out the rioters. This is from Mad Maxine Waters, no relation, who said to get up into people's faces. And, you know, Pelosi didn't condemn this. She gave license to it. So they're going to turn the midterms into a referendum on Roe, and that's fine because they have nothing else that they've accomplished. And the media is going to bang this drum because they don't want to report on crime or the border or inflation. They have to do this. It has to be a culture war. And so just like the rage that they stoked over race in the summer of 2020, they're going to stoke the abortion rage this summer. It's going to be rage versus reason because we all know it's going back to the states. States can figure it out themselves. That's fine. Abortion is sacred to the left. What that means is this is a religious situation. This is a religious war to the left. Nothing means more to them than this abortion situation. So if you think a Molotov cocktail or graffiti or surrounding some justice's home is a big deal, that's nothing. Wait till the thing drops this summer. It is going to get so much worse. But we all have to remember this. In this country, I know it's a very tender issue. First trimester, people are pretty forgiving about abortion. They are, if you look at the polling. After those first couple weeks, though, they don't want to have anything to do with abortion, and everybody needs to focus on how the country feels, and that's how it feels.
One of the things that they felt, Greg, was, this is a quote from administration officials, tremendous passion, and therefore it was okay. And they waited until today to actually say, oh, actually, don't commit violence.
Well, not only is it illegal in, I believe, all states, you're also a jerk. You know, imagine if a producer at The Five decided to change the format and didn't tell you. Would you go to Meghan's house? Knock. I mean, that just. I mean, when you think about it, personalize it. Think about how mentally unstable you are going to somebody's house because you're upset at them for something either political or something to do with your job. And you can say, no, Greg, this is different. This is about abortion and the Supreme Court. Well, it's exactly the same thing. You go to somebody's house in order to intimidate and threaten them, you're a jerk. And any journalist, I don't know who that person was on CNN, if she was a journalist, not sure, or anybody on the CNN, how stupid they are. Because if you condone this, like that, like saying, like, you know, talking about civility doesn't work, then you're opening the door for that to visit you, your home. And we have this, I call it mutually assured civility, MAC. That's kind of understood. It's implied that that's what we do in life. But once you, like, the left does this a lot. They open the door for stuff. And then when the stuff happens, they're like, oh, my God, you're new. But you just did it. Maxine Waters told people to get in people's faces. Chuck Schumer threw out these threats about Kavanaugh. Remember that? And then and it's like, oh, and then they blame attacks on, like, Chris Rock on Donald Trump. Yeah. It's like they somehow repeat debunked lies. Like this is going to lead to the banning of interracial marriage, which we know is just laughable. It's easily debunked, but they're under the assumption that no one's actually going to read the opinion and find out. This is exactly what they did with the Fine People hoax. They want to rile up people so that they get into a state of irrational fear, so they hit the streets and intimidate people. And then you have to spend a couple of years and work backward and go, well, this never happened. This isn't real. This has not happened. It's going back to the states. Abortion isn't being made illegal, blah, blah, blah. Bill Maher was amazing. Did you see him when he was talking about it? He was like, he was basically learning in real time, literally, about abortion. He's like going, most of the people who are pro-life are women. And, you know, and abortion laws are far stricter in Europe than they are here. Yeah. I don't understand.
Judge, what about the intimidation factor at like a justice's house? Is that something that, one, you could, from the White House, you could say that's wrong, but also from the Justice Department, you could say, we're going to arrest you.
You know, if only the Attorney General would act against the people who are violating a federal code the way he tried to act against parents of children in schools, calling them domestic terrorists. I mean, we would have some sense of equity here, but there is no equity because the left traffics in rage. But the statute is 18 U.S.C. Section 1507. It says picketing or parading, whoever with the intent of interfering with or obstructing or impeding the administration of justice. And that's what they're trying to do, folks. They're trying to obstruct the administration of justice. They don't want this decision to be the final decision. And with the intent of influencing the decision with a judge, and I'm trying to cut through this, resorts to a demonstration in or near a building or residence, and they're talking about judges shall be fined or imprisoned to not more than 1 year. You know, if Psaki and Joe Biden were so anti, you know, this kind of behavior, why did they call out the Department of Justice or the FBI and say, even with the Molotov cocktail going off where was it, in Wisconsin, saying, you know, we're going to send the federal agents out. But I got to tell you something. I am a Catholic, okay? And there was something that, and I'm pretty tough, but there was some of the language that they used that was so incredibly offensive to me. And I respect the First Amendment and free speech. Let me be clear on this. But when they say, keep praying because we will be burning your Eucharist, stuff your rosary and keep praying. We're going to remain outraged after this weekend. And then they're singing, thank God for abortions. You know, and everything they do is hypocritical because on the one hand, they're saying that this decision is a threat to democracy. They're so stupid, they don't understand that the Supreme Court has said we're going to send it back to the states so it can be an issue of democracy, so that you can vote depending upon what you believe. The Supreme Court didn't say it was unconstitutional. They said let the people decide. And finally, I think the outrage is even worse when they say, you know, they show the hangers and all that, you know, and that this is how people die, this is how people die. Well, you know, I don't want to get into, you know, when does life begin and all that, although you did reference it, Jesse, and I think most people would agree with the, you know, the first, second, and third trimester, the way you analyzed it. But you want to know, you want to use a hanger? How about you take a picture of an abortion, of a fetus being pulled apart? Let's not go there. Let's try to have an intelligent discussion. And when Clarence Thomas says we won't be bullied, their response is bully them more. They've teed themselves up. The anger, the intent is there. Use the law, use the statute. That's all.
It's all good, too. Harold,
First
last
of all,
word
happy
to you.
birthday.
Thank you.
On a lighter note here, two things. One, violence has no place in politics. We have seen anti-abortion activists. We've seen those who are opposed to certain things being taught in schools. We now see this nonsense, and it's no longer nonsense when you can't wake up outside your home as a judge or a justice because people are outside threatening you. This one-upmanship we have in politics today has to stop. The White House and others should call this out, just as Republicans should call out violence when it happens or when the language is heated on the other side. Jesse, I happen to think your analysis is right, and welcome back. I think that we have Casey on top of Roe, and I hope the conversation can return to the facts and to the law here. And whatever the court decides to do, I hope they don't overturn Roe. I frankly hope they don't give it back to the states because I don't want a patchwork. But, Judge, if they do, I'm an American. I can live with what the court says. And there's politics behind everything, and that judges and justices are chosen by politicians or by presidents and Democrats. If they want to change this, they're going to have to do this at the ballot box. But first and foremost, stop the violence. Stop the protesting outside of justices and judges' homes, much like I wanted people to stop threatening school board members with violence. It has no place in American politics. This is archaic, it's brutal, and people who do it should be arrested.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.